We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots of offseason trade and free agent speculation. We're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, the Pittsburgh Penguins, as well as the Anaheim Ducks and Nashville Predators. We also have some key significant injury updates, some really, I guess we'll call it confusing updates on top prospect for Montreal, Ivan Demidov. Is he coming over from Russia or is he not? There's conflicting reports out there right now. Plus, we could be seeing another top prospect join the Calgary Flames. And we also have some sad news regarding broadcaster Greg Millen and some news on the Gaudreau family as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Unfortunately, we're going to start off with a piece of sad news, and then we're going to follow that up with I guess a bit of a better story regarding the Gaudreaus. We have just found out shortly before recording this video. I guess the news was circulating a little bit earlier today, but I didn't come across it here until just a short time ago. But longtime broadcaster, primarily for Sportsnet and CBC, Greg Millen has suddenly and unexpectedly passed away today. Greg Millen, born in 1957, 67 years old, hadn't had his birthday yet this year. Played 14 NHL seasons as a longtime goaltender, and then got into broadcasting where he's worked for, I think it's around 3 decades. Greg Millen was a broadcaster that I've had a chance to listen to tons of times, like a lot over the years. As I talked about when we lost legendary broadcaster Bob Cole, I feel like Bob Cole, in many ways, was like part of the soundtrack of my the first quarter of my, or more than that, hopefully, like, I guess, like a large part of my hockey life. I've been such a passionate fan of the sport, played the sport, been around the sport, since I was a kid. And just, thinking of all the NHL games, all the big moments in NHL history that I've been fortunate enough to watch and feel like, feel a part of, is like, I hear Bob Cole's voice. And, Greg Millen isn't far off. And he worked a lot with Bob Cole over the years. It's kind of weird how I come across this news earlier today. I was looking back at some old highlights, obviously with the Ottawa Senators poised to make the playoffs here for the first time since 2017. I got watching some old clips, some highlights from the 2017 run where they were, another playoff team that nobody predicted to go all the way to the conference final. And Greg Millen and Bob Cole did a lot of those games together. And I can hear, as soon as I saw the news, I could immediately hear Millen's voice in my head with some of those calls. I remember that crazy Erik Karlsson, a couple of the Karlsson plays, where he linked up with Mike Hoffman all the way out, big alley-oop down the ice, and then I can hear it, and it's so sad. From what I don't know Greg personally, but from what we can see on social media, his teammates at Sportsnet and CBC over the years absolutely love this guy. He seemed like to be a real good, humble person. He was a husband, a father, grandfather as well. And it's just, only 67 years of age. He had a lot left to give, and just was so passionate about the sport. It just, like I said, it amazes me sometimes. Of course, I'm getting to that point of my life where some of these people that have been around the game for so long, unfortunately, are no longer with us. And it's just kind of, like I said, when you really think about it, the emotion you feel when you hear their voices, and you don't always think of that sometimes when you're watching sports and you're taking in all these big moments. But yeah, I certainly want to extend my condolences to Greg Millen's family, friends, and coworkers who have had the joy of working with him and being a part of his life. He just seemed like a real good person that was, super passionate about this game that I know I and many of you watching this absolutely love. So rest in peace to Greg Millen. And the other piece of news we got today that was, of course, hockey related, but not necessarily directly with NHL stats or anything, but we got a post today from Johnny Gaudreau's widow Meredith, who had finally posted that she had delivered their third child. Of course, but I just kind of never thought about, when child was going to be due, because we had found out when that accident happened back at the end of August, when Johnny and Matthew unfortunately tragically passed away, that Johnny and Meredith had just recently found out that she was expecting with their third child. So the little boy was born on April 1st. Carter Michael Gaudreau, born as a healthy little boy. Same middle name as his dad. According to Meredith, looks just like him. 8 pounds, 3 ounces, and over 20 inches long. So nice to see that she was able to carry through with a nice healthy pregnancy and had another healthy baby boy that hopefully can follow in his father's footsteps someday. So Carter Michael Gaudreau is now with us. So it's a little bit piece of good news on the Gaudreaus. Now on to the regular NHL news that we normally talk about. Start usually on Mondays. We talk about the 3 stars of the week as announced by the NHL. Tonight, the first star of the week was none other than the record-breaking Russian machine, Alexander Ovechkin, who put up 5 goals and 6 points last week, and of course, broke the all-time goal record, which was the dominant story and headline amongst the NHL here, which we've talked about at great length. So he gets first star honors. Second star of the week is Habs captain Nick Suzuki, who's been terrific for them, helping for their playoff push. I remember watching that game. I believe it was against the second game that they had back-to-back against the Panthers, where he scored a late goal to tie it up. I think it was 7 or 8 seconds, and followed that up with an overtime winner, which I think came like a minute or so in. It was pretty quick. I know I was watching a different game, and I flipped over to catch the end of it to see, because I had seen on the NHL app, I was like, oh, looks like the Habs and Panthers are almost done here, and looks like it's a real close game. Flip over, it's like, oh, it looks like Florida's going to pull this one out in only dying seconds, and bam, they tied it, and then bam, they win it. And he's been huge for them. So he deserves that honor. 7 points to 4 games this past week. And Blues centerman Robert Thomas, one of the better playmaking and two-way players in the game, 7 points in 3 games this past week as well. So they all had phenomenal weeks. Of course, the Blues on a massive 12-game winning streak. Of course, they're part of the Amazon Prime Monday Night Hockey tonight as they do battle with the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, Jets Blues has a possible playoff series as well, and certainly has a playoff feel to it. So far this evening, it's in the first intermission here as I record this video. A bunch of other injury and roster move updates around the NHL today. Edmonton Oilers are going to still be remaining without Leon Draisaitl for a while. He remains out. Unfortunately, Trent Frederick's return did not last. He played 7 minutes, re-injured the ankle, and he's back out of the lineup. It sounds like he's most likely going to be shut down for the remainder of the regular season, and Coach Chris Knobloch has made it known that he expects him to be ready for playoffs. So, yeah, Stuart Skinner apparently is starting to skate as well, so he's getting closer to a return. And young goaltender Olivier Rodrigue, who they've had to bring up after the Skinner injury, is going to get his first NHL start. Of course, Pickard's been handling the load of the work here, but at some point they got to give Rodrigue a game, and it's going to be their next one, which is great for him, for his hopefully things go well as he makes his debut. In San Jose, Sharks have confirmed that Mukko Madulin is out for the rest of the season. They've also reassigned one of their top prospects in Quentin Musty back to the American Hockey League now that his junior season is over. The Rangers are in a massive game tonight against the Lightning. Had a terrible first period. Lightning scored 3 goals in 2 minutes. I seen Alexis Lafreniere get a 10-minute misconduct for yapping at the refs. Not a good start at all to that game. If they lose that game to the Lightning tonight, it's not completely over, but it's going to be a big blow in with any hope. But this team continues to show their issues. I have no faith, to be honest, in the Rangers catching Montreal to get in for that final spot. But K'Andre Miller is out of tonight's game. He missed the game with an illness. In Vancouver, there's now reports, according to Elliot Friedman on Saturday Headlines, touched on the fact that Pettersson might miss the rest of the season, that he had not completely given up hope. He's still trying to see if he can get back. But at this point, I'm not sure if it's really going to matter because I think Vancouver's playoff hopes are pretty much done. Mathematically, they are alive, but it doesn't look very promising here, in my opinion. And the Winnipeg Jets, also Nick Ehlers is day-to-day as well. And Seattle Kraken today also announced they've signed one of their draft picks to a 3-year entry-level contract. 2023 fourth-round pick Andrei Lashko, the forward from the Niagara Ice Dogs of the OHL, has signed his 3-year entry-level contract. Now, as I mentioned, we have some confusing and conflicting updates for top prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, Ivan Demidov. His KHL club is out of the playoffs, so they're eliminated. So their season is over. But in the KHL, not Russian League, they have different levels. Each team kind of has one or two levels down. So the lower levels are still playing. So Ivan Demidov, there's one report, I believe it's from Sports Express, saying that the Montreal Canadiens are expecting Demidov, now that his season is over in the KHL, to be able to come to North America, sign his contract, and get into the lineup and be available to Montreal for the playoffs. Now, Marco D'Amico and RG.com, their reports are completely different, saying at this point, technically his contract has not expired. And I do believe that there's some reports saying that Habs representatives are talking to the Russian representatives to see if they can get his contract to be terminated for the little bit of time that we left on it. I'm not sure the exact time. I think their contracts expire in May, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know, but for right now, apparently he's being reassigned to play in a VHL. Which is also a team that his brother plays on as well, which is what he preferred. If he has to stay over there, that's where he wanted to go. So, I don't know. It doesn't look like Demidov is coming, but things can always change. I know when the last time his Russian coach was asked about this not long ago, he kind of just played it off and said, "What do you mean? I'm not sure about Montreal. Like he's signed here." So, he didn't really want to get into anything and just kind of blew it off. So it doesn't sound like they're in any kind of hurry to let him leave. And I wouldn't hold out any hope that the Canadiens are going to be able to get him available for the playoffs, but you just never know. But yeah, confusing and conflicting reports out there on Demidov. But things, the more reliable source from what I can see, I would lean towards the fact that he's probably not going to be let go. Now, if the Habs went on a really deep playoff run, and of course it's a little early to predict that, but if they did, and they were still playing well into May and late May or something, maybe that might be possible. But barring that, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll sign for next year, barring some kind of change in circumstance. I'm not sure if they can somehow keep him over there, because I don't think they can. But it's different way of doing things over there, we'll say. Another prospect, though, that is expected to be available is Calgary Flames top prospect Zane Parekh. Of course, the OHL's Saginaw Spirit have now been eliminated from the playoffs in the Ontario Hockey League, and it's expected that he is about to join the team. No guarantee that he's going to play, but there is belief that it's pretty good chance that he could make his NHL debut and get into a game or two here before the regular season is out. Of course, the Calgary Flames are in the midst here of a big playoff push, so I guess they need to decide if that is great. Obviously, it would be a good experience for him, but when you're in a playoff push and if is it going to make the team better? Is there too much risk? I don't know. We'll have to see how the next couple games go. I would suspect they'd probably want him to be able to practice a little bit first, but we don't really know. But at the end of the day, he could be. He's definitely joining them. I'm just not sure if he's going to play. We'll have to wait and see. I know Friedman first brought that up on Saturday Headlines here as well. Now onto the speculation around the NHL. Couple of things. One other thing that Elliott had brought up too on Saturday Headlines was the fact that the NHL is considering a version of their offseason to kind of be a little bit more parallel with what Major League Baseball does with their winter meetings. He mentioned obviously that with we knowing that they're going to have a decentralized draft this year, there's already kind of buyer's remorse, if you will, on that concept, and there's a good possibility they may go back to the old format possibly as early as next year. We don't know that for certain, but there is some talk about that, and that there's some that suggested that they take like the winter meeting style and they just kind of set it up so that the draft, start with you go from the awards into the draft and into free agency, just bang, bang, bang. All have it all just be a couple of days apart. Which, to be honest, I don't see why you couldn't do that. I'll have it right at the end of June. Obviously July 1 is when free agency starts, and that's because of the way their contracts run. I don't think you need to try to change that. That would probably be tricky to do logistically. So you can leave that be and maybe just have the draft be a couple of days before free agency. Put the award show a couple of days before that. Have it, the awards and the draft kind of be in the same city. And, just make it, and they can have meetings and deal with free agency all together. So we'll see. I mean, there seems to be some appetite for it. They're still kind of exploring things on that front. So we'll see. A bunch of updates, though, around the NHL for offseason speculation. One around, I found this article talking about what could be the next trade that we might see this year to kind of compare to like the Pierre-Luc Dubois, Darcy Kuemper trade that we saw last year. It was basically a swap of bad contracts. But to be fair, I think it's a trade that both teams have been quite pleased with. Darcy Kuemper has been playing much better and had a big bounce back season for the Los Angeles Kings. That's certainly a deal to me that came with a lot of risk based on how the last year went with Washington. For a team like LA, who's been, making the playoffs consistently, but also losing in the first round consistently, I was like, well, that's a risky move if they're going to put all their eggs in that basket. But it's worked out. And Pierre-Luc Dubois, is he, really lighting it up in Washington? I wouldn't say that, but he's been a lot better. I'll give him that. He's definitely having a better season, and for the most part, is more productive. So what's the next type of deal? Because we see these bad contract swaps often. Usually like not every year, but usually at least one big one every year. And one that was suggested in an article, this is a little bit different because it's not really bad contract for bad contract, but more of a type of trade where both players could benefit from a change of scenery, and kind of benefit and get their careers kind of re-energized. It suggested Trevor Zegras to Nashville for Jonathan Marchessault. Now, the only issue there is you got a major age gap. If I'm Anaheim, I'm probably not trading Zegras for an aging winger who just signed a big free agent contract that struggled, or at least has production come big time. Now, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't completely rule out Steven Stamkos. If Stamkos is moved by the Predators, or they'll have to speak to him and you have to be okay with it, I wouldn't rule out Anaheim being a destination. But I don't think it'd be a Zegras return. So could Trevor Zegras benefit from a change of scenery? I think he could. I still don't think that he's fully realizing his potential there. Wouldn't be shocked if he is moved. But I don't see that being the fit. Could Anaheim and Nashville hook up on a trade involving one of these struggling free agent signings from the Predators? Yes, I do think that's a possibility. I just don't think that would be the return. But Trevor Zegras, could he be a fit in Nashville? Absolutely. He fits the mold of being a little bit younger, adds a skill in things that they don't have, which is good. Again, I would just be surprised if that was the deal. But let me know your thoughts on that. If Nashville is going to trade a guy like Marchessault or Stamkos, which has been brought up by numerous outlets here in the last week or so, is Anaheim a destination, and can they get a young player in return? I don't think they can, but let me know what you think in the comments. Some comments as well from Dan Kontrinsky, who writes for PHN, so Pittsburgh Hockey Now, talking about how the Penguins' decor has been a huge part of their issues. We all know the Penguins' goaltending gets blamed a lot, but their defense core has been a big part of their issue as well. We know Ryan Graves has been struggling the whole time he's been there. And according to Kontrinsky, and according to this article, he feels that Carlson and Letang have kind of brought out the worst in each other, so to speak, and at least at times. And it hasn't worked. And that, and bringing up the possibility of an Erik Karlsson trade here yet again, we keep hearing that it's something that the Penguins would love to do. It's just going to be very complicated because of the contract again. Now, he was traded once with this contract, a little bit of money retained, but, again, he was also coming off a 100-point season when that happened. He's not anymore, and it's a completely different scenario. So, getting him, the Penguins would have to retain probably $2 to $3 million at least to get it done. But, can they find a deal for him with retained money? They can. It's not a ton of time left on the contract at this point either. But again, where's he going to end up? But the Penguins have a variety of issues. The decor is nowhere near good enough. They do sometimes bring out the worst in each other. The goaltending has been terribly inconsistent. And their top players, besides Crosby at least, Crosby's still chugging along like a fine-tuned engine. But the others, and outside of like Raquel, Rust has been okay. But obviously, they're getting older, they're slowing down, and the team needs a variety of stuff. Like they've done well to accumulate. I will give Kyle Dubas a little bit of credit and for what he's acquired for draft picks and some of the prospects, but they need to continue to do that, and it's going to take a while. To me, a lot of the prospects and things they've accumulated are not super high end. So there's, obviously they're going to have a shot at getting a good prospect this year, depending on how the draft lottery works for them. So again, we'll see where things go. But an Erik Karlsson trade out of Pittsburgh, is it likely? It is. But is it going to fix everything? Not unless they remake the complete defense core. They have a lot of work to do there. After they traded Marcus Pettersson, who I know needed a new contract and they felt didn't make sense to pay him, so they moved him, but he was one of their better D. So again, this team is taking a step back again. So we'll see what happens. But a Karlsson trade, complicated, so hard to say what happens on that front. Lots of talk around Montreal, and I know Habs fans probably don't want to hear this right now because they're pushing for a playoff spot, and they're very likely going to get it, I think. I mean, I do have a lot of faith in them, more so than the teams chasing them, so I do think they're going to hold down that wild card 2 spot and get into the playoffs this year. But obviously, a big part of their success is they are getting some of their veteran guys playing out of their mind who you never would have predicted. If you looked at the beginning of the season, looked at the roster, and you said, late in the year, Montreal is going to be in position to make the playoffs, and you're going to have like Brendan Gallagher is going to have a resurging season, 20 goals. Josh Anderson's going to be playing some of the best hockey we've seen in a few years. You'd be like, really? Like that seems, it'd be hard to bet on because of how they've gone the last couple of years, right? So, you say what you want. Like a lot of their offense has been driven by Hudson, Suzuki, and Caulfield. You get a little bit of secondary there for Slafkovsky and Laine, but the veteran guys have been chipping in, and they're playing their best hockey. So there's already some talk around. Not so much Gallagher, because I don't think Montreal would trade Gallagher. I think they view him as like a heart and soul, heartbeat kind of guy of the team. And you know what? If he's going to play better and be back to being a 20 goal scorer, if he can keep that up, I think they'd be happy to have him write up that contract there and be that leader, 20-goal guy, heart on your sleeve kind of player that he's always been. But Josh Anderson, I don't know if he can get back to this again, right? It's challenging. They've come close to trading him a couple of times, and they've always kept him because they like his veteran presence. They like what he brings, and I don't doubt that. It's just that getting another opportunity to trade him where his value is going to be boosted up, you might regret it. The contract never really aged well. It's had its moments. Good player, good guy to have around. It's just one of those guys that the contract was different. You wouldn't hear about it. But Anderson is a guy that I do wonder about as an offseason trade worth a boost in value, especially if he has a decent playoff. It might be a good opportunity to sell high and create an opportunity for another one of the young players to grab a roster spot next fall. Then Toronto, I know the article we looked at the other day exploring the Mitch Marner interview and whether or not Mitch goes. I mean, Mitch gave some interesting quotes, and I know the athletic writers there, Jonas Seigel and James Myrtle, like I said, their confidence in whether or not Mitch resigns in Toronto had dropped a lot after that. But if they can't keep Marner, they discussed some players that could be targeted as replacements, and there's not a ton out there in free agency. You look at guys like Brock Besser, Nick Ehlers, they're some of the top scoring wingers. They're nowhere near what Marner gives you. Like I said, if you take the money that they would have paid Marner, if they don't get it done, let's say he decides to go elsewhere, then they're going to have $14 million, let's say, that they were prepared to give to him. They can now go out and get probably 2 really good wingers and get guys that would make anywhere between $6 and $8 million and get 2 of them, right? So Besser and Ehlers are going to be some of the top guys out there. I don't know that either would be a great fit with the Leafs, but another name that came up though was Patrick Kane. Now Kane's going to come cheaper. He's also older. Was of course an idol of Matthews growing up, and still viewed upon as being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, current American-born hockey player. Matthews, like I said, I think will have that distinction later on in his career. But could Patrick Kane be an interesting choice there in Toronto? Now, when he was signing before, when he came back after the hip surgery, before he signed in Detroit, Toronto was reportedly in the mix. And after 2 years in Detroit, I'm not saying he wouldn't want to go back there. I think he's happy there to some degree, but the Red Wings themselves are going to have some tough decisions to make. They came within a point of making the playoffs last year. They've taken a step back this year. This Yzerplan rebuild is taking longer than they probably want to move forward. Like I said yesterday, there's some players like, Justin Hall, to some degree Tarasenko. They are going to probably figure out ways to move on from him. Do they really want to bring back Kane? And the first year of Kane was better than the second year. And I don't know. I'm just saying that they're going to have some tough decisions to make. We know last year Kane ended up re-signing on a one-year deal. Yzerman was reluctant to give him term. The rumor was that Patrick Kane wanted more term. He wanted a multi-year deal. The Red Wings wouldn't give it. He caved and signed a one-year deal to stay. Will he do that again? If the Red Wings wouldn't give him term last year, I can't imagine this year being another year older and production down a bit that you're going to get it now. So would another team come in and offer him a second year and a chance to maybe have a different scenery for the chance to win again? Would he take that? So again, this is only a scenario in Toronto we're talking about if they lose one of their top guys. So like if Marner or Tavares somehow end up walking, he could be looked upon as being a plan B replacement type of player. I mean, I think that they probably both stay, but like I said, with Tavares' performance this year, does he get more money than we might have thought on a new deal? And in Marner's case, we already know what the number is probably going to be. It's going to be somewhere around $14 million, is my prediction. But is it in Toronto or is it somewhere else? That's the key thing. Mitch is not going to have any issues getting paid. He's going to get whatever he wants. He's one of the top players production-wise in this game, a top-scoring, playmaking winger. There is going to be a lot of teams that want to get this guy if they can. If his agent continues to push him towards free agency, which is what we expect, he is going to have a ton of offers for similar money or more than Toronto is going to offer. So it's really going to boil down to what does Mitch want? And, does he want to be a Leaf? That's the big question. And if they get Marner done, let's say that we get him done at $14 million, for example, the Leafs sign him. But now Tavares' camp, let's say, says, well, he had a really good year. We were looking like $6 billion, but now we're looking at $8 billion. Can they do him at $8 billion? Like I said before, if you sign, they have $27 million in cap. You sign Marner to $14 billion, you give Tavares $8 billion, and now Nyes is looking for a long-term deal, at least 6 or 7. You get no money left. You can't do it, right? So you have to have something give there. So we'll see what happens, but Toronto could be looking for some replacement players. And if this doesn't work out and Tavares or Marner walks, Kane could be a player they want to talk to. Be interesting to see him play with Matthews. Let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.